Okay, so you said over a ton of research about this whole organizational resizing thing.
Yeah.
So we're going to really dive deep into mergers and acquisitions and downsizing. And I think what you're really trying to get at is not just sort of like the mechanics of it all,
Yeah.
but like the human side.
Right.
How does this impact families, employees,
Exactly.
entire communities?
It's really fascinating because it's something that's constantly happening all around us.
Right.
It's a living, breathing part of our economic ecosystem.
Yeah, and it feels like every day there's another headline about some mega merger or a company like streamlining its workforce.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the articles you sent over mentioned that back in 2000, global merger and acquisition activity hit something like $3.5 trillion.
That's right. And you know what was happening around that time? The dot-com bubble burst.
Right.
And that wasn't just a tech industry event. It rippled through the whole economy.
Oh, wow.
It pushed even more companies to resize, often with this, laser focus on short-term stock gains instead of, long-term stability.
So you're saying even these events like market crashes actually influence these huge corporate decisions.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder, is there ever a truly safe time for employees?
That's a great question and something we'll definitely dig into further.
Okay.
But I think if we stick with that $3.5 trillion figure for a second,
okay,
it's easy to get caught up in the financial side of things, the sheer scale of it all.
Right.
But what these sources really drive home is the human cost.
Yeah.
It's not about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about people's lives.
Yeah. One of the studies even found that morale plummeted in 60% of companies.
Wow.
That downsized, and it didn't even matter if it was for strategic reasons
Right.
or just straight up cost cutting.
Wow.
Can you imagine the emotional toll that takes?
It's like this dark cloud hanging over the entire workplace.
Right.
And then think about the ripple effect.
Uh-huh.
The people who are laid off might face financial strain.
Sure.
They have to scramble for new opportunities.
Right.
Their families are thrown into uncertainty.
Right.
Children have to adjust to new routines.
Right.
Spouses might be thrust back into the workforce.
Yeah, it really paints this picture of how far-reaching the consequences can be.
Exactly. It's not just contained within the walls of the company.
That's true.
One article even mentioned that calls to employee assistance programs often skyrocket during these times.
Oh, wow.
People are stressed.
Right.
They're anxious. They're looking for support.
It really makes you wonder, do companies really fully grasp the magnitude of their decisions?
Yeah.
I mean, is there a way to do this without causing all this collateral damage?
That's the key question, and it's something the research explores in depth.
Okay.
One concept that stood out to me was this idea of the psychological contract.
Yeah.
It's this unspoken agreement between an employee and their employer. Expectations about security,
Right.
fairness, career growth, all that good stuff. But when a company resizes, it can really shatter those expectations,
Yeah.
leaving employees feeling betrayed and disillusioned.
It's almost like a rug is pulled out from under them.
Exactly, and it's not just about whether someone loses their job or not.
Okay.
It's also about how they're treated during the process.
Okay.
One source talked about interactional justice.
Interesting.
It's this idea that even tough decisions can feel fairer if they're handled with transparency and empathy.
So it's about more than just the outcome, it's about the process.
Exactly, because when people feel like they're being treated fairly, they're more likely to be resilient even in the face of difficult changes.
So you're saying companies should prioritize being more open and communicative?
Transparency is definitely key.
Okay.
But there's also this deeper layer here. We tend to think of resizing as purely an economic strategy.
Uh-huh.
But the sources suggest it's far more complex than that.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What else is going on beneath the surface?
Well, there are these things called institutional pressures where downsizing is actually seen as good management, regardless of the circumstances.
Interesting.
And then there are these sociocognitive factors where managers oversimplify incredibly complex situations by just focusing on headcount.
Yeah.
It's like reducing human beings to numbers on a spreadsheet.
That sounds incredibly dehumanizing. So if resizing is this complicated mix of, economic pressures, management perceptions, and human psychology, are there any alternative approaches that companies could be using?
Yeah.
What are some of the more innovative solutions out there?
Well, there are definitely some bright spots out there.
Okay.
One article specifically mentions Cisco Systems.
Huh.
They've developed this really innovative approach where they offer partial salaries and benefits
Wow.
to laid-off employees who choose to work for charitable organizations.
Wait, so instead of just handing them a severance package,
Right.
and saying good luck, they're actually supporting their former employees in finding meaningful work.
It is.
That's amazing.
And it's a win-win, really.
Yeah.
The employees get to continue developing their skills,
Yeah.
gain new experiences, contribute to their communities,
Yeah.
and the company gets to demonstrate its commitment to social responsibility
Mm-hmm.
while potentially even opening up new talent pipelines.
So it's not just about minimizing damage.
Right.
It's about turning a potentially negative situation
That's exactly.
into something positive.
And that ties into another key theme that emerged from the research.
Okay.
The importance of adaptability.
Mm.
For companies, this means being flexible and responsive,
Yeah.
being able to pivot quickly as circumstances change.
Right.
But it also applies to individuals. Employees need to be open to new roles,
Uh-huh.
willing to learn new skills, and embrace the fact that their careers might not follow a linear path.
So it's like everyone needs to be on their toes, ready to adapt to whatever comes next. But isn't that exhausting? I mean, how can you build a sense of security when everything feels so unpredictable?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
And that's why the sources emphasize the importance of revitalization after a resizing event.
Okay.
It's not enough to just cut costs and move on.
Right.
Companies need to rebuild trust,
Yep.
boost morale,
No.
and refocus everyone on a shared vision for the future.
Okay, but how do you actually do that?
Right.
How do you mend those broken psychological contracts
Right.
and get people excited about working there again?
Well, one company implemented this interesting technique called living the vision,
Okay.
where employees were actively involved in shaping the company's direction
Got it.
after a major downsizing.
Interesting.
It wasn't just top-down decision-making.
Right.
Everyone had a voice.
So it's about empowering employees,
Exactly.
making them feel like they're part of the solution,
Right.
not just victims of circumstance. I like that.
And another company held these venting meetings
Okay.
where employees could openly express their feelings about the resizing. It might sound a little touchy-feely, but it was actually incredibly effective.
You know, when you first mentioned venting meetings, I have to admit I pictured something out of like a cheesy corporate drama.
Right.
But the more we talk about it,
Yeah.
the more I see the value in creating that space
Exactly.
for people to process their emotions.
It's about acknowledging the human impact of these events,
Right.
not just trying to sweep them under the rug.
Yeah.
And it's especially important for the people who stayed with the company.
Right.
They might be feeling survivor's guilt, anxiety about the future, all sorts of things.
It's like everyone needs a chance to grieve the old version of the company
Exactly.
and adjust to the new one.
And that process can be messy and emotional,
Right.
but it's essential for moving forward in a healthy way.
Okay.
Speaking of moving forward, we've talked a lot about downsizing,
Right.
but resizing isn't always about shrinking.
Right.
Sometimes it's about strategic growth through mergers and acquisitions.
That's right. I actually have some personal experience with that. A few years back, the company I was working for got acquired by a much larger corporation. It was a crazy time full of uncertainty and upheaval. I remember feeling completely lost in the shuffle. What insights did the research offer about navigating those kinds of situations?
One study examined community banks competing with a merging regional bank.
Okay.
It found that the banks that actively learned about the merging bank's customers and developed targeted strategies to attract them were the most successful.
So it's not enough to just sit back and wait for things to settle down.
Right.
You have to be proactive and find opportunities amidst the chaos.
Right, and the sources highlight the importance of clear communication throughout the process. Mergers and acquisitions can create a lot of anxiety and confusion for employees on both sides. They need to understand how the changes will impact their roles, their teams, and their futures.
I remember feeling like I was in the dark for months.
Yeah.
Rumors were flying, departments were being restructured. No one seemed to have any answers. It was incredibly stressful.
That's a common experience, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And it underscores the need for leadership to step up,
Right.
provide reassurance guidance, and a clear vision for the future.
It sounds like transparency and open communication are essential regardless of the type of resizing event.
Yes.
But I'm curious, is there anything individuals can do to prepare themselves for these situations?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like we can predict when a merger or a layoff is going to happen.
That's true, but the research suggests that there are steps you can take
Okay.
to increase your resilience and adaptability, regardless of what the future holds.
Okay, I'm all ears. What are some practical things people can do?
One of the most important things is to focus on developing transferable skills.
Okay.
Those core competencies that are valuable across industries and roles.
Got it.
Things like communication, problem solving,
Right.
critical thinking. Those are always in demand.
So it's not just about specializing in a particular field.
Right.
It's about building a diverse skill set that can adapt to different environments. It makes a lot of sense.
Another key piece of advice is to build and nurture your professional network. Having a strong network can open doors to new opportunities, provide support during transitions, and give you access to valuable information.
Yeah, I've definitely seen the power of networking firsthand. It's amazing how often opportunities arise through personal connections.
And finally, the research emphasizes the importance of continuous learning.
Okay.
The business world is constantly evolving, so staying ahead of the curve is crucial.
So it's not just about getting a degree and calling it a day.
Right.
It's about constantly seeking out new knowledge, developing new skills, and staying curious.
Exactly, because in a world of constant change, the most valuable asset you have is your own adaptability, your own ability to learn, grow, and evolve.
Right.
And that brings us to a fascinating aspect of resizing that's often overlooked.
Okay.
Its impact on the marketplace.
You mean how these events affect customers, competitors, and the overall industry landscape? That's a whole other layer to consider.
No, it is, and it's a crucial one.
Yeah.
You see, whenever a company undergoes a major resizing, it sends ripples throughout the market. Customers might get nervous, competitors might see an opportunity, and the whole industry can be thrown into flux.
Wow, it's like a domino effect.
Yeah.
But how do companies actually navigate those market forces while they're in the midst of resizing? What are the strategic considerations?
Well, the sources highlight several key factors.
Good.
One is the need to anticipate customer reactions. And adapt accordingly. Any kind of organizational shakeup can make customers nervous. They might worry about the continuity of service, the quality of products, or even the stability of the company itself.
Because any change, even a positive one, can be unsettling for customers.
Exactly.
So how do companies manage those perceptions and keep their customers on board?
One article we have Resizing, and the marketplace breaks down this dynamic into 3 waves of customer loss that can occur during a resizing.
3 waves? That sounds a little ominous.
Well, it can be if it's not managed effectively.
Right.
The first wave happens right after the initial announcement of the resizing.
Okay.
Some customers get spooked and jump ship simply because they're uncertain about what the changes will mean.
Sure.
It's a knee-jerk reaction fueled by fear and uncertainty.
So it's crucial to communicate clearly and reassure customers that the company is still committed to meeting their needs.
Exactly. Transparency and proactiveness are key in mitigating that first wave of loss.
Okay.
Then comes the second wave, which occurs as the resizing is implemented. And the company starts making changes to its operations, products, or services.
And some customers might not like those changes, right? They might feel like the company is no longer serving their needs.
That's right. And this is where it's vital to listen to customer feedback. Understand their concerns, and be willing to adjust course if necessary.
Got it.
It's about demonstrating flexibility and a genuine commitment to customer satisfaction.
So it's not just about pushing through the changes.
Right.
It's about making sure those changes are aligned with customer needs and expectations. What about the third wave? You mentioned there were 3.
Yes. The third wave is often the most insidious.
Okay.
Because it stems from the internal turmoil and dysfunction that can plague companies during a resizing.
Okay.
Remember the resizing syndrome we talked about earlier?
The drop in morale, the breakdown in communication, the general sense of unease. Absolutely.
Well, when employees are stressed, demoralized, and uncertain about their own futures, it can impact their performance and their interactions with customers.
Sure.
This can lead to a decline in service quality, responsiveness, and overall customer experience. And that, unfortunately, can drive customers away.
That's like a domino effect.
Yeah.
The internal struggles of the company eventually spill over into the customer experience.
Right.
So managing the human side of resizing is not just about employee well-being. It's also a critical business strategy.
Precisely. The article argues that the customer losses in this third wave are often the most significant.
Wow.
Because they're directly tied to the company's ability to manage the human side of resizing.
So it's not just about making the right strategic decisions. It's also about executing those decisions effectively and minimizing internal disruption. It sounds like a delicate balancing act.
It is, and that brings us to another crucial aspect of navigating market forces during resizing. Understanding the competitive landscape.
Because while a company's going through all these internal changes,
Right.
their competitors are watching, right?
Exactly.
looking for any opportunity to capitalize on the situation.
Exactly. One of the sources, Competitive Dynamics in Organizational Resizing, offers a fascinating framework for analyzing how companies respond to resizing by their rivals.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the key takeaway from this framework?
Well, the source suggests that companies can adopt one of four strategic postures when facing a competitor's resizing indifference,
Okay.
threat,
Okay.
opportunism,
Got it.
or transformation.
So they can either ignore the situation, view it as a danger, see it as a chance to gain an advantage, or use it as a catalyst for their own transformation.
You got it. And the research suggests that the most successful companies tend to adopt either an opportunistic or transformational posture.
Okay.
They don't just react to the situation.
Right.
They proactively leverage it to their advantage.
So they see the resizing of their rivals as an opportunity to grab market share.
Right.
Or to rethink their own strategies and make bold moves. It sounds like a time for bold leadership and strategic thinking.
Absolutely. And another source, Organizational Adaptability, emphasizes the importance of flexibility and responsiveness in navigating these dynamic market conditions.
So companies need to be agile, right? Able to adjust their course as needed based on what their competitors are doing and how the market is reacting.
Yeah, exactly. They need to be able to anticipate changes, make quick decisions, and execute those decisions effectively. It's about being proactive, not reactive.
It sounds like a lot to juggle.
Yeah.
Internal changes, external pressures, the need for speed and agility.
Yeah.
How do companies even keep up?
Well, one increasingly important factor is the ability to leverage technology effectively.
Because technology is constantly evolving.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It can either be a powerful tool for navigating change or a major disruptor.
Exactly. One of the sources talks about how companies are using technology to streamline their operations, improve communication, and enhance customer service, even during periods of significant change.
It's about using technology to their advantage, not letting it control them.
And that connects to another important point, the need for innovation.
Okay.
Resizing events can often force companies to rethink their products, services, and even their entire business models.
Because what worked in the past might not work in the new resized reality.
Precisely, the sources suggest that resizing can actually be a catalyst for innovation, pushing companies to come up with new ideas, explore new markets, and find creative solutions to challenges.
It's about turning a potentially negative situation into an opportunity for growth and reinvention.
Exactly.
So resizing isn't always a bad thing.
Not necessarily. It all depends on how it's managed and the mindset that companies adopt. If they approach it with fear and a focus on cutting costs, then yes, it can be incredibly damaging.
Right.
But if they see it as an opportunity for growth, innovation, and renewal, then it can actually be a positive force.
So it's all about perspective and leadership.
Exactly.
But I have one final question about navigating the marketplace during resizing. You mentioned the importance of customer relations, competitive dynamics, and technological advancements. But what about the company's reputation?
Yeah.
How do these events impact the brand and its standing in the market?
That's a great question, and it brings us to a crucial aspect of resizing that we haven't touched on yet.
Okay. The importance of communication and public relations.
Because how a company handles these events in the public eye can have a lasting impact on its reputation, right?
Absolutely. The way a company communicates its resizing decisions, both internally and externally, can shape public perception, influence investor confidence, and ultimately determine the long-term success of the restructuring.
So it's not just about making the right decisions.
Right.
It's also about communicating those decisions effectively and transparently. What are some of the key considerations for companies when it comes to managing their reputation during a resizing?
One of the most important things is to be proactive and transparent in their communications.
Okay.
Companies should clearly articulate the reasons for the resizing, the expected outcomes, and the potential impacts on stakeholders.
So no more hiding behind vague statements or corporate jargon?
Exactly. Stakeholders, including employees, customers, investors, and the general public, deserve clear, honest, and timely information.
And that information should be consistent across all channels, internal memos, press releases, social media posts, everything.
Right.
Consistency builds trust and credibility.
It makes sense when a company is open and honest. It shows that they respect their stakeholders and value their input.
Right.
But what about the negative aspects of resizing?
Yeah.
Layoffs, for example, are never going to be positive news.
Right.
How do companies address those sensitive issues without damaging their reputation?
It's about acknowledging the human impact of these decisions and demonstrating empathy for those affected.
Okay.
Companies should express their appreciation for the contributions of departing employees and provide support during the transition.
So it's not just about cutting costs and moving on.
Yeah.
It's about treating people with dignity and respect.
Right.
Even in difficult circumstances.
Exactly. And that includes offering generous severance packages, outplacement services, and ongoing support to help former employees find new opportunities. These actions speak volumes about a company's values and commitment to its people.
It sounds like a lot to manage,
Yeah.
especially during a time of significant change and upheaval.
Yeah.
Are there any specific strategies or tactics that companies can use to effectively communicate their resizing decisions?
One of the sources, reputation management, during organizational resizing, suggests a three-pronged approach.
Okay.
Control the narrative.
Got it.
Engage with stakeholders,
Okay.
and demonstrate authenticity.
Okay, let's break that down. What does it mean to control the narrative?
It means taking charge of the message
Okay.
and ensuring that the company's perspective is accurately and effectively communicated.
Got it.
This involves anticipating potential questions and concerns, developing clear and concise messaging, and proactively sharing information through multiple channels.
So it's about being prepared and proactive, not just reacting to rumors or negative press.
Right, and it's also about being consistent in the message.
Uh-huh.
The company's leadership team should be aligned on the key talking points and deliver those messages consistently across all platforms.
It sounds like a lot of coordination and planning. What about engaging with stakeholders? How do companies do that effectively during a resizing?
It's about creating opportunities for dialogue and feedback.
Okay.
Companies should hold town hall meetings, host online forums, and utilize social media platforms to answer questions.
Got it.
Address concerns and gather input from employees, customers, investors, and the community.
So it's about listening as much as it is about talking.
Absolutely. Engaging in two-way communication shows that the company is open to feedback,
Right.
values the perspectives of its stakeholders, and is committed to transparency.
And what about the third element, demonstrating authenticity? How does that play into reputation management?
It's about being genuine and transparent in their communications.
Okay.
Companies should avoid using corporate jargon, canned responses, or overly promotional language.
So it's about speaking from the heart, not just from a script.
Exactly. People can tell when a company is being sincere.
Right.
And they're more likely to trust and support a company that is open and honest about its challenges and intentions.
It seems like managing a company's reputation during a resizing is just as important as managing the financial and operational aspects.
It is. A company's reputation is one of its most valuable assets.
Yeah.
And it's crucial to protect that asset during times of change and uncertainty. And that brings us to another crucial aspect of resizing that's often overlooked.
Okay.
The importance of revitalizing the organization after the event.
Because it's not enough to just cut costs and move on, right?
Yeah.
Companies need to rebuild trust,
Right.
boost morale,
Exactly.
and create a positive path forward.
One of the sources, revitalization after resizing, offers some practical techniques for achieving this.
Gotcha.
One technique is called living the vision, where employees are actively involved in aligning their work with the company's direction.
It's about empowering employees and giving them a sense of ownership in the future of the company.
Precisely. And another technique is to create opportunities for employees to process their emotions and let go of the past.
Those venting meetings we discussed earlier.
Exactly. The sources suggest that these meetings can be surprisingly therapeutic, helping employees to move on and embrace the future.
It's a reminder that the human side of resizing is just as important as the strategic and financial aspect.
Absolutely. And when companies prioritize both,
Right.
they're more likely to achieve their goals and create a sustainable and thriving organization.
This deep dive has been incredibly insightful. We've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
From the individual employee experience to the impact on families, communities, and the marketplace.
Right.
We've explored the psychological effects of resizing, the strategic considerations, and the importance of adaptability, innovation, and revitalization.
Yeah.
But I have one final question. What does the future of resizing look like? Will it always be such a disruptive and potentially damaging force in the business world?
That's a great question, and one that's difficult to answer definitively.
Sure.
The business world is constantly evolving.
Right.
And new challenges and opportunities are always emerging.
Because the only constant is change, right?
Exactly. But based on the sources we've examined, there are a few key trends that might shape the future of resizing.
Such as?
One trend is the growing focus on corporate social responsibility.
Companies are becoming more aware of the impact their decisions have on employees, communities, and the environment.
And this increased awareness might lead to more ethical and humane approaches to resizing.
Yeah.
Companies might be less likely to resort to mass layoffs as their first response to challenges.
Instead, they might explore alternative solutions.
Right.
Such as retraining employees, redeploying them to different roles,
Exactly.
or even offering early retirement packages.
Right.
It's about finding ways to resize without causing unnecessary harm.
Another trend is the rise of the gig economy.
Yeah.
And the increasing prevalence of remote work. More and more people are working as freelancers or independent contractors, and this shift might change the way companies approach resizing.
They might be more likely to rely on a flexible workforce that they can scale up or down as needed.
Exactly. It's about adapting to the changing nature of work.
These are all really interesting trends, but I'm curious, how do you see technology playing a role in the future of resizing?
Yeah.
I mean, automation and artificial intelligence are already transforming so many industries.
That's a crucial question and one that the sources grapple with quite a bit.
Yeah.
It's clear that technology will continue to have a profound impact on the workforce.
Right.
And this could lead to new forms of resizing. It's possible that we'll see more companies using technology to automate tasks, which could result in job displacement.
That's a concern that many people have, the fear of being replaced by robots.
Right.
But is it all doom and gloom? Are there potential upsides to this technological transformation?
Absolutely. While automation might displace some existing jobs, it also has the potential to create new opportunities, leading to the creation of new roles in industries that we can't even imagine yet.
So it's not just about job losses.
Right.
It's also about job creation and the evolution of the workforce.
And the way companies handle these technological advancements will likely shape the future of resizing.
Right.
It's about embracing innovation while also ensuring that the benefits are shared equitably and that employees are supported through the transition.
It sounds like the future of resizing is full of both challenges and opportunities.
It is. And one thing is clear, it will continue to be a complex and challenging issue for companies, employees, and society as a whole.
Right.
But by understanding the dynamics at play, embracing adaptability, and prioritizing human well-being, we can create a future where resizing is less disruptive and more focused on growth, innovation, and shared prosperity.
That's a hopeful message to end on, and I think it's important to remember that we all have a role to play in shaping that future.
Absolutely. By staying informed, engaging in dialogue, and advocating for policies that support workers and communities, we can help create a more just and equitable future of work.
Wow. We've covered a ton of ground here.
We have.
From the individual employee experience to the impact on families, communities, and even the marketplace. It's clear that resizing is a force to be reckoned with.
It really is.
But it's not just about surviving the next wave of change, right?
Right.
It's about creating a future of work that's more sustainable, more equitable, and more human-centered.
Exactly.
You know, one of the things that really struck me is this idea that resizing in all its forms is here to stay.
Yeah.
It's almost like this constant undercurrent in the business world.
Uh-huh.
What does that actually mean for someone who's trying to make sense of it all?
Yeah.
Like, what advice would you give to someone who's feeling anxious or uncertain about the future?
Well, the sources we've looked at really paint a picture of a business landscape that's in constant flux.
Right.
But that doesn't mean we're powerless. The key takeaway for me is that understanding the forces at play, you know, the human costs, the strategic considerations, the long-term implications, is incredibly empowering.
It's like the more you know, the better equipped you are to navigate those choppy waters.
Exactly. For companies, it's about making informed decisions, not just knee-jerk reactions. It's about communicating transparently with employees and prioritizing their well-being throughout the process.
And for individuals, it's about recognizing that your career might not follow a straight line. It's about being proactive, developing valuable skills, and building a strong professional network that can support you through transitions.
One thing that really stood out to me was this idea of embracing lifelong learning.
Yeah.
It's not just about getting a degree and calling it a day. It's about constantly seeking out new knowledge, developing new skills, and staying curious.
Because in a world that's constantly changing, the ability to learn and adapt is probably the most valuable skill you can have.
Absolutely. And it's not just about technical skills.
Right.
It's about developing your emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
your resilience, your ability to collaborate and communicate effectively.
Yeah.
These are the skills that will help you thrive in any environment, regardless of what the future holds.
It's almost like a shift in mindset. Instead of fearing change,
Right.
we need to embrace it as an opportunity for growth and reinvention.
I love that because it's not about being a passive bystander in your own career.
Right.
It's about taking control, shaping your own path,
Yeah.
and contributing to the creation of a future of work that you're excited to be a part of.
You know, when we first started this deep dive, I have to admit, I was feeling a bit overwhelmed
Yeah.
by all the research and the potential downsides of resizing.
Right?
But now I'm actually feeling quite hopeful.
Me too, because what we've uncovered here isn't just a set of problems. It's a set of opportunities. Opportunities for companies to do better, for individuals to thrive, and for all of us to create a future of work that's more human-centered and sustainable.
It's a reminder that even in the face of uncertainty and change, we have the power to shape our own destinies.
And speaking of shaping our destinies, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
One of the sources mentioned this company that held venting meetings
Right.
to help employees process their emotions after a major downsizing.
Right.
And what they found was that even the employees who didn't speak up during those meetings benefited from simply being present, from witnessing the shared experience of their colleagues.
You know, we've joked about those venting meetings a bit.
Yeah.
But you're right, there's something powerful about shared experience.
Yeah.
About knowing that you're not alone in your struggles.
Exactly. And that connection, that sense of community can be a powerful source of strength and resilience in the face of uncertainty and change.
And on that note, I want to thank you for guiding us through this deep dive. It's been truly eye-opening and thought-provoking.
The pleasure was all mine. And to you, our listener, we encourage you to continue exploring these issues, to ask questions, to seek knowledge, and to never stop learning.
Because in a world of constant change, the most valuable asset you have is your own adaptability, your own resilience, your own capacity to grow and evolve.
Keep diving deep, keep seeking understanding, and keep shaping the future of work that you want to see.